Hello, my name's Fran and you're watching a retouching tutorial for tipsquirrel.com. Happy Halloween everyone, I hope you've had a great weekend and a great Monday. Today I'm doing a very special Halloween themed video and I'm going to be taking this image and turning it into this. I'm an absolutely huge fan of The Walking Dead. I think it's a fantastic show. I have read some of the comic book as well. So I've been very inspired to do a Walking Dead poster, and as you can see I got some inspiration together of the original posters for the TV show, and they have a lot of themes of isolation. You know, there's a lot of yellow and decaying kind of elements in there, really grungy. And I thought I'd take those and add those into an image. So I got this image off pexels.com and I'm going to use those elements from the original posters and work with that image to create my own Walking Dead inspired poster. So let's get started. It's going to be quite a long video for you guys, but stick with it and I hope you learn a lot. So first I'm going to add some fog. Now I've got an image of some clouds and they're going to make for some great fog, realistic fog in the scene. So I've just got this image, so I'm going to scale it up to how I think it should be and just distort the image a little bit just so it places in the image correctly. So I'm not too worried that it's distorting the image because it's going to be kind of blended in. It's going to have a lower opacity, so I'm not too fussed how it's going to look now, but after it will kind of blend in quite well. So I'm going to desaturate it because obviously I don't want a blue section of fog. I'm going to desaturate that, and then I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light, and that will help blend it into the original image. Just going to move that up just a little bit, and I'm going to add a mask as well, and I'm just going to paint over. Obviously there's a harsh line there where the image stops, so I'm just going to add a bit of brush work into there. I'm going to paint over that line and help blend in the fog or the cloud with the image. I'm going to paint down here as well because I don't want any fog on the foreground. And that's looking quite nice. I'm probably going to add in my own as well, so I'm just going to add a brand new layer and I'm going to have like a very low opacity brush. I'm going to paint on the image with this white brush, so it's got a low opacity so it's not going to affect the image loads, but just add in some darker elements to the fog. I'm just going to keep painting on. I'm not too worried if it's quite dark because I can lower the opacity after, but I'm just sort of adding in a bit more fog there. So yeah, I am going to reduce the opacity there just so it's more blended in. I'm going to add a mask and I'm just going to paint back in some of the original image because I think I've probably just gone a little overboard with the fog, so I'm just going to paint back in some of the original image, which you can do, you know, it's all non-destructive elements here, non-destructive layers, so you can paint back in the original image or you can add more fog or etc. So yeah, it's all to do with blending in and making the image really sit with the scene, make the layers really sit with the scene. So I'm just going to put those in a folder and rename that mist. So it's added a really nice misty kind of foggy vibe, which really adds to the isolation of the guy in the scene. So next I'm going to add some blood to the guy's shirt. Now this guy could be a zombie, this guy could be someone who's been fighting zombies, so we're not really sure about the character, but I'm just going to add the blood to the shirt because I think it already set the scene and set the tone of the image. So I'm going to add a brand new layer, change the blending mode to soft light, have a somewhat low opacity brush. I'm just going to paint in red tones to the shirt. Now this is quite a long process, and I will sort of fast forward this section of the video because it's all about building up the colours, using lighter reds, darker reds, changing blending modes from soft light, using blending modes on hard light, and really building up. Now the closer the blood is to the hands is going to be darker, and the blood is going to be softer the more you go up the sleeve. So really building up the colours, the darkness of the blood or the red tones in the sleeves and the cuffs, and then sort of breaking off and adding lighter tones towards and up the sleeve. So as you can see, I'm painting on a soft light layer here, and further on in the video you'll see me adding a layer with hard light and then painting on using darker tones, and it's all about building up, like I said before, because you don't just want to paint on one colour, because blood doesn't form like that, it does dry over time, and so it will have darker patches and lighter patches, and it's all about making it realistic. So I'm going to do that as time goes on, but this part of the video may be kind of speeded up towards the end. But as you can see here, I'm adding a hard light layer with a darker tone of red or brown colours in there, and it's all about working with low opacity brushes as well, because you really want to build up the intensity of the colour using low opacity rather than 100% and it not looking realistic. So I'm just going to fast forward the video here, but as you can see I'm working with hard light and soft light layers, but as we fast forward the video you'll see the end result. So at this point I'm just going to add some layer masks to the image, because as you can see I've kind of spilled over the edges of the shirt. So I'm going to add those masks and I'm going to paint on black over the edges where I've spilled over the colour. So next I'm going to add some blood to the hands. Now it looks a bit odd if I didn't, you know, he's got bloody sleeves, why wouldn't he have blood on his hands? So I'm going to add a new layer, and then I'm going to pick a dark kind of red tone on maybe 25%, you know, low opacity, and paint on to the hands of the image. And just like I said before, just building up the colours using lighter tones, darker tones, using layers with soft light blending mode, using layers with hard light blending mode, and just really building up the colour and the intensity, but still using low opacity brushes. Again, I'm going to fast forward the painting here because I don't want the video to be too long. I'm going to add a couple of masks here, just because I've spilt over the edges when I've been painting. I also think the blood would only be on maybe the fingertips and maybe the ends, just under the cuffs, maybe not the whole hands. So I'm just going to paint back in some of the original image using like low opacity brush. So I'm very happy with the blood on the shirt and the hands. I think it's looking really realistic and great. So I'm going to put that in its own folder and call that blood. so I know that all those elements are within that folder. And I'm going to add a torn shirt element to the image. So I found this image online and I quite like the way that the ripped jeans have made this fraying and kind of like a hole in the jeans, so I think that could work really, really well on this image. I'm going to copy that and scale it down and position it where I think it would be. There's quite a good crease in the shirt at the bottom there. So I'm thinking that could make a great tear in the shirt. I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light. You can have a play around with what works best for you, but in this situation I think soft light works great. I'm going to position that where I think it should be. And then I'm going to add a mask and I'm going to paint around the edges where I don't want the image to fall. Obviously you can see these hard edges where I've cut the image out, so I'm just going to paint around that so that only the tear is there. It's also still blue from the jeans, so I'm going to head to Image, Adjustments, and then Hue Saturation, and bring the saturation all the way down so it appears in grayscale or black and white. So I think that sits quite well in the shirt. I think it looks somewhat realistic. I think the shirt wouldn't have fraying like that, but I'm not too fussed in terms of realism. I think it still looks quite good. So I'm going to add some blood to this section because I think you would see skin, you would see like blood coming through. So again, I'm going to use a soft light and hard light layers and paint in using different tones of red within that section of the shirt. Again, you want to build up dark tones, light tones. Again, the section where there is a tear, that would have darker tones. And then you can build up around the shirt with lighter tones to make it feel like the blood has sort of seeped in and run through the shirt. So I'm really happy with that, so I'm going to group those layers together and call it Ripped Shirt. So the next step of the tutorial is getting the colour right, the tones right. So I'm going to create a group called Colour. So this is where I'm going to include curve layers, saturation layers, selective colour, colour balance, etc. So I'm going to use a curves layer here. I'm going to have like a linear curve, an S curve, just to add a bit of contrast into the image. And then I'm going to use selective colour. I'm going to add a little bit of cyan into the blacks, and I'm going to take away some of the yellow and improve the blacks. I quite like doing that with my imagery, especially adding cyan to black tones. I think it can work really well. So I'm just going to use sort of those adjustments there. I'm probably going to adjust the S-curve just a little bit. Now next I'm going to use a second curves adjustment layer, and I'm going to create a matte effect. Now I do have a full tutorial on this on my channel, so the link will be in the description if you do want to check that out. But essentially you put a point here and we can move the curves up, and it just takes away a lot of the darkness and richness of the blacks away and just creates a more grey tone, which I really like for this style of image. Now next I'm going to use a colour balance layer. I'm going to add in yellow and red to the midtones. Like I showed you before, the Walking Dead posters do have that very yellow vibe, so I'm going to add that to my own image. I'm just going to adjust some of these adjustment layers here just a bit, just for my tastes. I think it's great to go back to images and just tweak things if you're not quite happy with them. Now next I'm going to add a hue and saturation layer, and I'm going to bring the saturation down quite a bit because I think it's just looking a bit too bright, a little bit too vibrant, and I really do want it to have like a gritty, apocalyptic style feel to the image. So I'm very happy with the way the colours have gone here, but I'm probably going to add some more yellow into the scene, but I'm going to use camera raw for that. So I'm going to duplicate my background layer, then go to filter and camera raw filter. And I'm going to bring the exposure down just a bit. I'm going to add some contrast, reduce the highlights, open up the shadows, open up the blacks, put in a lot of clarity, and I'm going to add in a lot of yellow using the temperature slider, probably add in a bit of green as well. Reduce some of the vibrancy, and I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to make a few more tweaks here. I think it still needs to be a bit more yellow. Probably going to add a bit more red into it actually. I still think the image is still a little bit bright, so I'm going to go back to the camera raw filter. And I'm going to reduce the highlights quite a bit. And I'm going to reduce some of the exposure as well. And then I'm going to click OK. I think it probably is a little bit too dark, but because I've put it on that layer, I'm not able to change it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to revert back by 1 on my history, duplicate my camera raw layer, and then press Command F, and that will put the same camera raw settings I did just before that, so that I have it on that layer and I can reduce the opacity if I want to. So that's looking pretty good. I'm quite happy with that. I think I may add a curves layer at this point, just to add a bit more contrast and make it a little bit darker. So I'm going to hit curves, and I'm literally just going to drag down this point. Not too much, but just enough so it does fit the kind of Walking Dead posters that we saw at the beginning of the video. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think it's looking really, really good, but the only thing that's kind of missing is the Walking Dead logo and perhaps the strapline or tagline as well. At this point I am going to crop it. I think the overall image is far too big, and I think it does need to crop in so your focus is on the guy in the center or at the side. So as you can see, the image is really, really big, so I'm just going to reduce that just a touch. I kind of like the idea of him being on the left hand side, and then perhaps I can include the logo on the right hand side. I'm just going to adjust the crop just a little bit. And I'm really happy with that. So next I am going to add the Walking Dead logo and the strap line just to really tie it in with the whole Walking Dead theme. So I'm going to grab the logo here, I'm going to copy that, add it to my canvas. So I'm also going to get the slogan, and I'm going to copy that and add it to my canvas. And I'm going to scale down each of the logos there. So I think it works quite well sort of alongside the guy on the left. So I can see that the background image, the tree is kind of obscuring or kind of messing up the A within the logo. So I'm just going to add a little bit of mist, a little bit of white paint to the tree there just to tone that down so that you can see the A a little bit better. So I'm just going to paint in a bit more fog, a bit more mist to the image, just so that the A isn't obstructing the background. And I'm going to remove any unwanted parts of the mist that I've created. So next I'm going to add a high pass filter over the top of the entire image, because I think it just needs a little bit of sharpening. So how we'd go about this is we click this drop down menu here, and at the bottom we have merge visible, and if you hold Alt and click merge visible, it'll actually collate all of the layers and merge it into one layer at the top. And I'm going to go to filter, other, and then high pass. I'm going to add in 5 pixels of high pass, and then I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light. So it adds just a little bit of sharpness to the entire image. I feel like there's something missing, so I'm going to add a couple of grunge kind of textures. So I've got a couple here that you can see on screen, and I'm going to copy those onto my canvas. I'm going to scale those down just a touch. And the great thing about textures is that when you change the blending mode of them, you can create really great effects using different blending modes. So for example, screen may look different to soft light, hard light will look different to overlay, you can use multiply, there's loads of different blending modes, and it's up to you really what you think works best for you. I think for me the best blending mode for this image is soft light, because it's just a little bit more subtle than some of the other blending modes. So I'm going to add my second grunge layer here. Again, I'm going to scale and place it where I think it should be, and I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light, and both of these I've changed the opacity to 50 because I don't want to overpower the image. But I think the grunge layers or the texture layers really help bring the whole image together, and it really helps to give this apocalyptic, destroyed, decayed kind of vibe that The Walking Dead show has. So here we have the final image. This is the before and after, and as you can see, I've worked really hard to create this Walking Dead inspired poster. I think it works really, really well. I love the yellow vibe and the textures, the blood. I think it all comes together really, really nicely, and I'm really, really happy with the result. So that's it guys, that is the end of this special Halloween edition of my Photoshop tutorials. If you have enjoyed this, don't forget to give it a like, and of course you can subscribe to the channel, it's absolutely free and you'll be notified about my latest videos. Don't forget to check out tipsquirrel.com for the latest Photoshop and Lightroom tutorials, and you can follow me on Twitter at Photoshop Pro and Instagram at Photoshop Fran. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in next week's video.